Okay, welcome along. My name is Dean Sherry from DSP and PHEVER.ie. What we're going to look at here today is the drums and getting your drums right and EQ'd correctly using additive and subtractive EQ, and also using some of the in-the-box features in Ableton 10 Suite. So let's get straight in and click on our drums here on the left side of the browser. We're going to type in 909. And I'm going to just take the core kit here and drag it over. So what that loads in then is a set of sounds here based on the 909, the classic Roland 909 drum kit. So we're going to use some of them, but I want to focus on the techniques, get the best out of this to make them a little bit better than how they sound and to make them shine in your mix. So I don't need these other channels. I'm going to delete them by selecting and pressing delete. If you hit this little arrow here, you'll see all the sounds within that grid sequence here are assigned to their own faders. So we'll come back to that later. I'm not going to use all the sounds. We're going to very quickly record in a MIDI sequence. And there's a couple of ways of doing this. I don't have a controller connected today, so I'm going to do this manually. And if I double click here, it creates a little sequence grid. We can click on the pencil tool. You can also demo the sounds here. For example, by playing the little keyboard, you can make it larger and smaller. Just where the mouse goes. As you can see, there's the magnifying glass, there's the select tool, and here's the draw tool. So I'm going to draw kick drum in very simply on the quarter note, and let's just have a listen there. Okay, nice low end 909 kick. Stop that. Let's add in some clap, whichever way we want to do it. And let's have a listen. Okay, very basic. Some closed hat. And maybe a little open hat. Let's have a listen. Okay, a little bit of groove going on. Again, they're very static because we've drawn them in exactly the same velocities. Velocities visible down here. But we can vary that later on, and I will vary that using some groove tools later on. But for the moment, let's concentrate on getting those sounds to shine. So if I click that here, we can have a quick look and a listen as to what's in use and what's not. You can see the little yellow play button that's showing us where the sound's being activated in the sequence. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to delete the ones not used. And obviously this saves processor and workspace. So we're not using the toms. Delete him. And let's delete all of these. Okay, 4 sounds going on, all at the same volume. I find it's very good as a workflow to try and start EQing and balancing sounds when you've got subsets going as a group. So this could be our drum group, for example. It's important to see where your levels are, what you want to shine through. Usually your kick, which is here, you want that pushing through the mix. Now obviously we need to leave space and dynamic range for other sounds to come in. So I'm going to set that, say, at -3. And then balance everything to that. We can always come back to it and adjust later on. That clap is quite loud. So I'm going to pull it down to about there. You can still hear it creeping through. Hi-hats. Again, we probably don't need as much brightness. So I'm just going to lower the volume a little. I'm still thinking a little bit too much hat. Okay, it sounds a little bit more balanced. And to create a little bit of space, it's always good to introduce a little bit of panning. And the way I consider this is, think about if you're watching a live band and that live band is playing on the stage, and you're looking at how the drummer is laying himself out. So he's generally center stage. So I'm going to leave the kick drum fairly central. And as the drummer looks down at his drums, he's going to have the kick more or less under his feet, the snare slightly over to the right if he's left-handed, the hi-hats will be over to the left, and you know, his cymbals and his toms would be situated around that. And I tend to think of panning in that direction. So for example, if you're the drummer sitting behind his kit, leave your kick central. I'm going to put the clap over maybe to one direction, say let's go to right a little. You don't have to be too extreme on this, because in mono systems you could lose sounds, but it does start to create some space and interest in the mix. Hi-hat closed, I'm going to move to the left, let's say about 10 left, 10 or 12, and I'm going to move the open similar but maybe slightly more, again just to create a little bit of space. Okay, so we've got some sounds moved to the right and the left there with a central kick. That will help us with our sonic spectrum later on. Okay, let's have a quick look at the kick. If I double click on the header here where it says kick 909, you can see the sample. I'm not going to get into adjusting the sample, and there is a couple of things we can do with that sample. But what I want to do is look at the EQing. So I'm going to clear the search bar here and I'm going to go to audio effects. And the first thing we want to do is find an EQ8. Again, I'm just using standard presets. Drag, and you can drop it up here onto the taskbar or drag it down here and place it. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and put some manners on this kick. So I want to solo the kick with that S button there. Generally what I would do is roll off some of the very low frequencies. You can't hear them and you can certainly feel them on a system, but that can create a lot of muddiness in the mix. So I'm going to select number 1 here and create that there, which is a low cut frequency. Sorry, it is a low cut frequency or a low pass. And I'm going to do the same on option 4, which is a high pass. We can activate all 8 if we want. For the moment, I'm not going to, so I'm just going to leave that here. Okay, now listen to how the sound changes. So what we have here is the frequency, which is where it is placed on the grid left to right, from low to high. You can see where the fundamental is around this kick. It's roughly the highest peak here. And we can actually bring it up here for visibility. So you can see that that's the fundamental of this is in around 57, 60 hertz. Let's focus on number 1 first, which is where we put our I actually find it's easier to do it here. So frequency from left to right, you can hear it disappearing. I think a roll off at about 30, you're not going to notice that at all. 25 to 30 hertz. Human ears only start to hear after 50 hertz generally, but you know, we can certainly feel those frequencies. So I'm going to put a roll off at around 25-30. You still have plenty of sub there. At the moment, the Q is set. It was at the default setting. I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to look at number 4 now, and which is the high end, and pull that back a little. So where do you start to lose the presence? You can hear it starting to lose all of its harmonics there. I'm going to bring it back up to maybe around 6 kilohertz. You won't miss it, and you could even probably bring it back more, maybe to around 3. And it's not really affecting the sound at all, but it is freeing up some space within the spectrum. So now I want to see, is there any problem frequencies? And what I'm going to do is select number 2 here, put a very high Q on this, and increase the gain fully. Now if I scan left to right with the frequency button, you're going to hear problem frequencies. Now I know they're accentuated, but these could be future problems. Okay. A little bit more volume, and I'm just going to move that. You can hear a little bit of resonance there, and then up around there it's not nice. That's at about 156. That's where I'm going to cut and do some subtractive EQ. So I'm going to cut the gain just a little, 1.5 2 decibels is more than enough, and then widen the Q a little. And what that does is put a small little dip around that problem frequency. So we're identifying problems really before they happen. I'm going to do the same here with the 3rd node. Turn the Q up full and then increase the gain to full. And let's scan left to right, generally from where we had the previous problem, but not too close, and see is there any more. And you can hear some strange sounds creeping in here. But where you think it may be an issue, not crazy on that sound, just subtract it out and widen the cue. Okay, if you then wanted to have a slight boost, you know, to help that fundamental shine through, it's just a case of activating another node, for example number 5, pulling it back to roughly where the fundamental was, and you could give this a little shelf boost here. Again, I'd go quite subtle with boosting, maybe 1.5 decibels is more than enough. And we could change the shape of that to make it a little bit more focused, but we've no need to, so I'm going to leave it as a wide cue. Okay, that's the EQing done on the kick. Let's bring in the rest of the sounds. What I'm going to do firstly though is continue on the kick, and I'm going to try and put in some compression. So the glue compressor is an excellent compressor here. Glue compressor, drag and drop. Okay, so first of all we need to basically pull back the threshold until we start getting some noise reduction, which is shown in here in the graph. So that's about 5 to 8 dB of noise reduction. I'm going to take it back a little. We don't really need that much. Up to around 3 to 5 is perfect. Okay, I'm going to take it back to 2 to 1 ratio, and again adjust the threshold just so as it's just starting to catch any peaks. Okay, about there. I'm going to set this for a kind of a long release and a kind of a slow attack. Not too fast, not too slow. So it's letting a lot of the sound through. I'm going to give it a bit of makeup gain then to compensate. Okay, I want to be subtle here because obviously a lot of this will happen later on in your mixing, but this just puts a little bit of control on that kick. And you can see it here. It's after being reduced then significantly. So obviously it's a case of balancing. I want to kind of keep it up around there. Okay, you can hear that kind of starting to poke through, nice punchy sound. But there's more we can do. Let's say we wanted to get a kind of an analog tape effect. So for example, let's go into our saturator, or even, let me see, we've got some nice new things here. Let's say dynamic tube. This is a nice one I'm playing around with lately. Hot driven tape in dynamic tube. Drag and drop. And what this will give us is different kind of curves to give us that kind of, it's a saturation type effect, a tube type effect, like a hot driven tape. Let's have a listen. Again, you're starting to get, I'm not going to give it full dry and wet. Okay, we can add some drive to make that kick start to shine. And here's where we can have a lot of fun, the saturator. Scroll down, oops, and grab your saturator and drag him in. Okay, saturation will add an awful lot of presence to the sound. So depending on the type of music you're going for, let's say we're making a techno track, you could go into a medium curve. And can you hear that toughening up? Or even a hard curve. Maybe a bit too much. I'm going to stick with the medium. Okay, and I'm going to give this a little bit of drive. Now you can see this obviously starting to sound distorted, so you want to be careful with this. I'm going to give it maybe about 3 decibels of drive, but it is important then to pull back your output a little. You don't want to be distorting, and you want to control that sound but still get that effect of the audio saturation. Okay, feel free to play around with this. You can change it around. I do like the medium and hard curves. The soft sine is quite good, but let's for the moment leave this as a medium. Another thing I tend to do is go down to utility, and bass drums are generally mono, so I'm going to put in a mono into the signal chain, which basically keeps that sound where we want it in the mono chain. It'll forgive you later for any bass resonances. Okay, what I'm going to do is copy by selecting all of these effects that I've just dragged and dropped. Select the first one, hold down Shift and select the last one. Then go Command or Apple C. And let's go to our hi-hat closed. And double click there. And just place your mouse in here, select, and Apple V. It'll drag in the same effects and the same settings onto all your devices. So I'm going to do it for the open. And all I'm doing is double clicking here on the taskbar, click in here, Command V, and they'll all swap in. Same with the clap or any other sounds that you may have loaded, Command V. Now obviously then what this is doing is loading in similar effects which will keep your drums sounding similarly processed. You know, you don't want to have wildly different effects on percussive parts, for example. You want to keep it fairly uniform, but obviously then the settings need to change depending on the sound. So let's focus on the closed hat firstly and have a listen to that. So firstly what I'm going to do is zero this out, turn that off, put our gains to 0 by double clicking. Okay, so we're going to start with a low pass on a high pass filter, either end, and 4 nodes is usually enough, maybe 5. Okay, so our hi-hat is the opposite end of the spectrum. So the first thing we're going to do is adjust number 1, which is the low pass frequency. Obviously the low cut frequency, we're going to cut the low frequencies out. We're not going to need them. So you can hear as I bring that up, you're just focusing on that very familiar sharp hi-hat. I think I'm happy enough there to bring that all the way right up. You could stick around 1 kilohertz to get some more fundamentals, so let's leave it there. And then again focus on the opposite end of the spectrum and let's have a listen. Ooh, too far. Apple undo. Everyone's best friend if you hit the wrong button. So I'm going to basically just see where I like the sound of that, focusing on probably around between 8 and 10 kilohertz. Anything higher than that isn't very nice on the human ears. Okay. That's it. Keeps jumping on me. That'll do me there. And if you want to raise that or lower that, you can bring in one of your other nodes. And what I'm going to do is look for problem frequencies again. So I'm going to turn my Q up full and move the gain up full, and then just move the frequency knob left or right. And let's see what we hear. Is there anything that we don't really like? There's a bit of a bird chirp. I think we're going to reduce that a little. Subtractive EQ. Take it down 2 or 3 decibels and widen your Q. Let's bring number 2 into play. See, is there any other frequencies there we want to cut or boost? Gain up full, Q up full. Okay, there's nothing giving us too many problems there. Yeah, that's a little bit high frequency, so I'm going to just pull it out a little. And be subtle, nothing more than 3 decibels generally, and widen the Q. Okay, that's our EQing done on our closed hats. Now let's have a look at our compression. Again, I'm not going to mess really with attack and release yet. We're going to keep it simple, slow release, slower, and slow attack, and a ratio of 2 to 1. I'm just going to take out the makeup, and I'm just going to adjust the threshold again, just until we're getting about 3 to 6 decibels of noise reduction. There it is there. Now let's give it some makeup gain. Okay, I like that sound. Hot driven tape. Do we want it? You can turn it on or off. Some people think it adds a nice bit of warmth. I'm going to take it out for the moment. Let's have a look at saturation. Let's try a hard saturation. And you can adjust the drive. This is where you can get that nice techno kind of stabs coming in. Sounds brilliant on rides or hi-hats. You can also add some width. Lots of different functions you can do. But that's kind of nice there. That'll really cut through your mix. And you can see the panning taking effect here. I'm going to reduce the output again a little because you have adjusted the drive. You don't want to have this distorting and driving up all your levels. So keep an eye and balance that out. Again, the mono I'm going to leave there. It is a mono sound in real life. Okay, on the hi-hats, because we're looking at hats, I think these are the functions we should copy. So I'm going to click on one of the devices and scroll over to the last device, shift and select, Apple C, copy. Let's go back over to our open hat and let's delete what we put in and repaste the settings from the closed hat, because they should really apply very similarly to the hi-hat, which is the open hat. And as you can see here, it's fitting quite well. It's a good starting, and that's a good workflow speed up. You don't have to do the same thing on every sound within the similar frequency ranges. The clap, for example, is a kind of a mid-range to high sound as well, so we could do the same thing. Just going to select the devices we don't want, delete, and copy paste the ones we do want, which is the hi-hat sounds. I'm going to change the saturation on this one, and let's have a listen to the clap. And let's try a wave shaper in this case, or a sinoid fold. Let's have a look at the drive on this. Okay, a little bit too much makeup on the clap. And let's have a look at our EQs. I think we're missing a bit of mid-range there, so I'm going to pull back frequency number 1. We're going to 0, 2 by double clicking there, 0, 3 by double clicking there, and let's have a listen to number 4 and move him back over there. Okay, again we're looking at the clap. You can see that the fundamental is in around 1 kilohertz here, so we can safely roll off anything, say from around 350 down. And similarly for high sounds, high frequency sounds, we can roll off a little bit of that and keep the clap away from where the hats are. Make them not interfere with each other. Now let's have a listen for problems. I'm going to select number 2, full gain, full Q, and scan left or right for problem frequencies or resonances we don't want. Not mad on that sound. I'm going to cut that out a little bit to subtractive. Widen the Q, and let's have another listen with at least one more node. Full gain, full Q, and let's have a scan. That's quite close to the fundamental. It's like a little whistle. I'm going to take a little bit of that out and widen. Okay, let's just again check our glue compressor and make sure we're happy with where the compression is starting. And then add some makeup gain. It's kind of nice there, it's sitting nice. Now let's hear how this sounds in the mix. So if we go to our overall master and drop in an EQ8, you can kind of see there that you've got some nice low end going on. Not much in the mid-range, but that's kind of normal. Our clap is kicking in there, but we've yet to add in bassline or synth sounds, and our highs are punching through nicely. Obviously there's a lot more EQing and mixing to be done, but you've now got your drums in a good place. I find then if you really want them to shine, go back to your audio effects and drop in the new drum bus onto the grouping here, and that's where you can really add some punch and some drive. But again, go easy with this. You don't want to distract from all your other sounds. You can add in some compression, medium or hard drum bussing, but I don't want to add in too much right now. And that's my demonstration of how to put some manners on your drums and get them to shine from the out-of-the-box samples. This is Dean Sherry, and you've been listening to DSP. Thank you so much.